All right, hey guys, what is up? I'm on again with my man Jayson Gaignard today, and he has a really fascinating zero to hero story because, I've known Jayson for a few years now, and you've gotten to the stage, and I don't want to tell it all because you tell it way better than I possibly can. But you're in a quarter million dollars of debt, credit cards, vendors, that sort of stuff. You've pulled yourself out of that hole. You've got a amazing conference that you hold called Mastermind Talks. You've got a very good podcast that you've got a ton of subscribers on. You've done really well on iTunes. So without further ado, I'm not going to talk over it. Tell me your zero story and how you went to hero. Even start earlier than that, because I know that you were an entrepreneur. Even in your late teens, early 20s, doing concierge work and stuff like that. How did that go, and then how did you hit the bottom and then bounce back up?
Yeah, well, I hope I live up to that introduction. So I originally dropped out of high school. I started a service-based business, which was a personal concierge firm.
Yeah.
And did that for a little bit, but I realized that service-based businesses are hard to scale. I was very lucky because I was new. It was a new industry. It was a new kind of emerging industry. And I was young at the time. I was 17, 18. Yep. So I got a lot of press. I had like a 3-page spread in newspapers and magazines. Like it was really good from that perspective, from an awareness perspective. But unfortunately, that didn't do too much for the business. So I ended up pivoting into an online product business, which was actually selling concert tickets online. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, it was because when people thought of the word concierge, they thought of a hotel concierge. And when they thought of a hotel concierge, they thought of concert tickets. And our slogan for that business was, if it was legal, moral, and would save you time, we take care of it. So when people came to us for concert tickets, like most entrepreneurs, when you start a business, you want to be the, everything to everyone. Yeah. So we just started doing concert tickets. That ended up growing really, really quickly. And thankfully I had a great mentor around me at the time to say, you really need to focus on this ticketing side of things. So we grew that to about $6 million a year over 4 years, and no outside investments. Just did it basically on credit cards, which is not not recommended per se, but that's how we built it so quickly. And then I was, quote unquote, living a life. I was living, my model of success at the time was a whole 4-hour work week. So, have a business that you can run from a laptop anywhere in the world, sipping pina coladas on the beach. But with all that free time and all that money, you start climbing up something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you start asking yourself questions like, why am I here? Will I be remembered? How many people show up to my funeral? And I simply wasn't happy with the answers I was giving myself. And around that same time, I realized basically I was making 22 times the national average income. And I was never good at tracking finances. That's always been my weak point as an entrepreneur, it's the case for a lot of people, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And that was mine as well. Yeah. So I was good at making money. I was not so good at keeping it per se, or keeping track of it. But I was making 22 times national average income, and it was bothersome to me because I'm not 22 times happier than the average male. I'm not 22 times healthier. 2 years prior, when I was 23, I had kidney complications because of stress in my business. So realized that money and happiness scale very differently. Consciously decided to sell the business. Subconsciously started to detach myself from it, and became comfortable with the thought of scaling it down to zero. So I started to sabotage it on some level. However, 2 things happened that were beyond my control that landed me $250,000 in cash debt on that way down, which was August of 2012. So that's when the house of cards crumbled, where I ended up with no business, no cash flow, and $250,000 in debt.
Okay, so you're in over your head. You've got $250,000 of debt. Your business is wound down completely, so you've got no revenue. Your health, I think you said, was in the toilet at that point, right? You had kidney problems.
Yeah, I mean, like most professionals, I built my business at the expense of my health,
Your own
right?
health, yeah.
And I was 72 pounds heavier than I am now.
Right.
Scary. That was actually the $250,000 in debt was tough to deal with. And when you have a business that does, sometimes almost $1 million in cash flow a month, and that stops, that's really terrifying. But the scariest part is I knew I had the mental capacity to pull myself out. But with all this added pressure because of the debt and not knowing what I was going to do next, I just had no energy. And it was like having a Ferrari for a brain with no gas in the tank. And that was actually the scariest part of that whole ordeal.
Right. So you pivot at this point. You say, okay, I'm going to change this. Like, was there a habit change? Was there a behavior change? What was it that got you out of this deep hole that you had dug yourself into that move things along? Because this is like a common problem that a lot of my clients at Total Debt Freedom have, where they get stuck on this merry-go-round where they keep procrastinating and they don't make that habit change to stop that position that they're in. So what did you do to change that?
Well, as our good friend Colin has this philosophy that, in transition, when one door closes, another one opens, but it sucks being stuck in the hallway, right? So
Exactly.
in that transition, it was very difficult because you feel like you're spinning, and you feel like you don't have any certainty over any area of your life. My health was uncertain. My relationship with my wife was uncertain. My daughter was 6 months old. All this happened in August 2012. September 1st, my daughter turned 6 months old. September 1st, I got married to my wife. So like a lot of change in a very short period of time. So yeah, it was definitely difficult. But one of the biggest things that actually got me back on track was actually leveraging habits on some level. And how that worked was I was unhappy at the time, obviously, given the situation I was in. So I started to do a lot of research in regards to the foundation of happiness, like what makes people happy. There's obviously a lot of science that supports happiness and stuff like that. So if I'm unhappy, obviously the logical solution is to look to what makes people happy. So
Right.
I started to look into that, and I discovered something. But basically, it's in a lot of literature that there's pillars to happiness, and one of the most kind of prominent pillars is perceived control. And for the first time in my life, I mean, anybody who has a daughter or anybody who has a child, first couple months, you lose all sense of control.
Yeah.
And the core reason why I'm an entrepreneur and why most people are entrepreneurs, whether they're conscious of it or not, is they have a deep desire for freedom to be able to do what they want, when they want, wherever they want. And it's ingrained in a lot of us. And up until my daughter came around, I was the ruler of my schedule, right? So she came around, threw everything upside down. I was in a bad space. And I was having a hard time being a new parent at the time because I just, I was not happy. So what I decided to do was I knew I couldn't control the time that she was awake, which was the time between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. But what I could control was the time before that or the time after that. Because I've always been relatively a morning person,
Right.
I really started to focus on morning rituals. So I'd wake up at 4 in the morning. I did that for about a year and a half. I'd wake up at 4 in the morning and just became vigilant when it came to habits and productivity within the first 4 hours of the day. So by the time my daughter woke up and I started getting emails and phone calls and that kind of stuff, I already did the bulk of my work.
Yeah.
And that was at the expense. You always have to make sacrifices, right? Somebody reached out to me yesterday and they're like, I want to do more stuff, but I want to also go to the gym and I want to spend time with my family and all that kind of stuff. And there's one thing in this world that's universal, and it's time. Everybody has 24 hours in one day. You can be born into riches. You can be born into, resources or whatever the case may be. But Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, all these people only have 24 hours in one day. It's what they do with that time.
Yeah.
So I had to make the sacrifice on my sleep and I was making the sacrifice anyways, having a 6-month-old daughter. So I ended up just being really vigilant when it came to the mornings because I knew I can get that sense of control back.
Right.
I could control my mornings to a T. And that's where I started to really start to get momentum again, because that was the biggest thing is, like I said, I felt like I was spinning and I wasn't getting traction in any area of my life. So being able to control something even that small, I was able to get control of it and get progress day by day by day and just really kind of take it that way. And it's only been 2 years now.
Yeah.
And my life is completely different than what it was from a health perspective, from a financial perspective, from a happiness perspective. I've never felt wealthier in my life. So it's amazing. We overestimate what we can accomplish in a day, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in a year.
Yeah, it's that whole, how do you eat an elephant? It's, one bite at a time sort of thing. And it sounds like you just basically change one small habit to gain control of a small part of your life.
Yeah.
Getting up early, changing your morning rituals, and then from there you kind of built on that, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Awesome.
It's a simplified way of looking at it,
Yeah,
but that is indeed how it came to be. So
it's tough. And that's a load of debt too. And you started working through that. How are things for you now? I mean, you hit bottom. You've started to climb your way back up. Like, what's going on? What's going on in your world today? Like, how have you built on those habits? Is there anything else that you've learned or changed? Like, one of the things that you talk about quite often is your network is your net worth. Like, a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on stuff and keeping up with the Joneses. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, which I made a little note on, I actually talked to Scott Oldford earlier on today, and he talked about self-sabotage. Hang on, my phone's buzzing here. And he talked about self-sabotage also. Let me just go back to self-sabotage for a sec. Why do you think you self-sabotage yourself?
So, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. One is, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is I always work best with my back against the wall. And it was a lot of entrepreneurs are kind of like that. That's when you feel most alive, right? Our identity as entrepreneurs oftentimes are just, people in general who are overachievers, is their identity is tied to overcoming adversity.
Yeah.
And there's a certain there's a complacency and a kind of blahness that comes with being successful. Like once you start achieving the goals, like for me, my mentors at the time, their model of success was purely financial. So that was the model that I adopted as well. And the thing is that when I started to get close to these goals and get close to achieving these goals, I realized I was still unfulfilled and I was unhappy. And I felt like I was sold a lie to a degree. So that was the one thing, is having empty goals, because then once you get close to them, you're like, well, this isn't exactly what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Another one, again, is the overcoming the adversity, because we all have a story, and we all oftentimes get our significance from being that person who anytime, and it's something that serves me well in business, because I dropped out of high school. My parents didn't think I could make it, blah blah blah. So I would be, anytime somebody says you can't do something, the first word that literally comes to my head is watch. Like,
watch me.
And I will go tunnel vision. I will put my family in harm's way. I'll put my health in harm's way just to prove them wrong. And it served me well in business for a long time, because I was able to grow that so quickly. But at the same time, now that I'm conscious of it, I'm like, hold on, I'm living my life to prove myself to others, which isn't the most kind of fulfilling life to live.
Yeah.
But that's another reason for sabotage. Another one is good story. I think that's actually one core reason. When I met Gary Vaynerchuk a few months ago at a friend of mine's event, and he was doing this kind of intimate Q&A with maybe like 10, 12 of us. And Gary has like a high 8-figure business, very, very well respected, New York Times bestseller, investor, all that kind of stuff. And he said that about a year, probably about 18 months ago now, he thought of like just sabotaging it all and starting from scratch, just to prove to himself that he could do it.
Right.
So there's a lot of like ego and stuff like that comes into play with it. So there's several reasons for kind of the self-sabotage, but those are just some that are off the top of my head.
Yeah, wow. All right. So I want to be very respectful of your time, because I know you're a busy guy and you got some podcasts to record today.
Yeah.
Are there any other habits which you found useful in your transition back up, like pulling yourself out of this hole, aside from morning rituals? If there's one piece of advice that you could give to people, let's say in the next 60 seconds, in changing habits or digging yourself out of that sort of hole, what would you say to them?
Yeah, well, I mean, if habits is of interest, I mean, the studies have shown that 40% of our day is unconscious habit loops. So if you haven't actually sat down and figured out what your daily behaviors are and stuff like that, that means that there's a good chance that they don't serve you. So being conscious of habits are really, really important. And I won't give a lecture on how habits are built on all that kind of stuff, but I will say the best resource is a book called Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. Yeah. And you actually don't have to read the book. A friend of mine did an interview with him. His name is Jonathan Fields. And if you look up Jonathan Fields, Charles Duhigg on YouTube, you'll see a 40-minute video, and you'll get 90% of the book in 40 minutes. And just understanding how habits are structured is really important. But the biggest thing for me, I say personally, is that I've always surrounded myself with people who've made me feel uncomfortable on some level, who are 1 or 2 steps ahead. Right. And what that does is we all have a deep yearning to feel accepted, or to feel like we're part of a group or a tribe in essence. Yep. So to surround myself with people who are a few steps ahead of me in a certain area forces me unconsciously to get to that level and bridge that gap between where I am and where they are as quickly as possible. And that's always been this huge push for me. But I mean, on the topic of finances, with that said, I mean, I knew, like, my last business, I could not go on not having my finger on the pulse of my finances, both in my business, both in my personal life, that kind of stuff. And I knew I had to make a significant progress there, because I can sell, I can market, I can do all that kind of stuff, but it's like pouring water in a strainer, right? Yeah, it's not gonna go anywhere. So I had to get that, I had to fix that. So because of that, I surrounded myself with 2 mentors of mine who are phenomenal at finances, like who are complete opposite spectrum from where I am. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have a philosophy, and Warren Buffett obviously is one of the second richest man on the planet. Yeah. They have a philosophy that once a year they try to eliminate one area of ignorance. whatever area that may be, whatever's most relevant to them. To me, this year it's finances, and I've made huge strides just by surrounding myself with people who are phenomenal at finances. It's changed my mindset just through osmosis, just through being around them. So whatever area of your life you want to change, simply surround yourself with people who already have those results. And another example is weight loss. When I was trying to lose the weight, I was the most out of shape person in my group. Everybody else was fit. Amir Rosick is a kettlebell champion and stuff like that. So you can't help but feel like out of shape when you're around these people. So, there's a saying that who you surround yourself is who you become. So be very conscious as to who you spend your time with.
Yeah. So that's awesome advice. It's like what Jim Rohn says. You're the average of the 5 closest people in your life. So if you surround yourself with people that are a higher average, you're naturally going to pull yourself up there. And the other thing that you said there, just to distill it in simpler terms, is you got a real good close grip on your finances. Like, you started to understand where money was coming from and where it was going. And you can't manage something that you're not measuring. And it sounds like you kind of transitioned over that to start measuring cash flow and money and understanding it so that you can manage it better. So that's awesome.
My finances were always this huge black cloud over my head. I had no clue. Even though I had a ton of money in the bank, I didn't know what I owed the government. I didn't know what was coming next in my business and stuff like that. So that was a huge thing that was constantly draining me. It's like holding up this bottle of water, and you say, how much does this weigh? Well, really, that doesn't matter. It's how long you have to hold it for. Right. So if I'm holding this black cloud of not knowing my finances for a long time, it really, really weighs you down. So that's, like I said, in any area, just surround yourself with people who already have the results you want to achieve.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, thanks, Jay. I don't want to take up much more of your time. I really appreciate you taking a few moments to chat. If somebody wants to find you or listen to your podcast, where do they get it?
They just go to mmtpodcast.com. So that's mmtpodcast.com. They'll get all the information on there. And then we have a closed Facebook group where you can reach out to me and stuff like that. So
cool. So check that out. Podcasts are a great way to learn about new habits, behaviors, and learn lessons from really smart people. So check it out. And thanks again, Jay. We'll talk to you later. Hey, dude?
I appreciate it, man.
All right.